Yo, what's going on? And welcome to Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. And this is Vikings Training Camp Live with KFAN analyst Pete Bursich. I'm Paul Allen, and this is courtesy of Omni Viking Lakes Hotel. We have an excellent show planned for you today, but Pete and I and others remember this time last year when we were doing this with a new head coach and so much new, we had no idea what to expect. 13 spine-tingling wins later, that was a lot of fun, but it only lasts that season. Now we begin anew.
Yeah, we do, and I think in the open, the part where Kevin O'Connell told his team, "I love you, and I'm here to fight for you," and I think that's kind of the feeling that he has brought here, and to take a team that lost 8 to 9 one-score games the year before, and then to come back and break an NFL record for one-score victories, I think says that and points that out perfectly. So these guys they were spine tinglers. They fought to the end, and I'm just very excited to see what they do this year.
So we are on Fox 9 and Vikings.com for 90 minutes, and coming up on the presentation, you will hear from Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell. We also are going to analyze and handicap some key position battles for the Minnesota Vikings, and General Manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah will stop by for a chat. But let's kick things off with our cast, which is field side, and Tatum Everett with the Vikings Entertainment Network will be working with Ahmad Hicks from Fox 9. Gabe Henderson from the VEN will be working with Don Mitchell. And Don, we begin with you with Fox 9. Put another 9 behind that. We got 9-9, and we no longer have 99 problems. Danielle Hunter is with the team.
That's right, 99, and none of them are problems when it comes to being with this Vikings team. Thank you very much, PA. You know, Gabe, when you talk about Danielle Hunter and everything that he's been through, we may not see him in actual pads today, but hey, nothing surprises me, right? But it'll be nice to at least see him in purple again, get him back out here. I know he's been with the guys, but to just be here for the fans to see him, it's huge.
Danielle Hunter is a difference maker, first and foremost. When he steps onto the field, you understand his presence. You see his physical nature, his physical stature. So if you're a young guy, you look at that and say, I know I won't be as big as him as far as physically wise, but how he prepares for the game, I want to do it the same way. So one thing that I'm looking forward to today is seeing how those young guys step up to the occasion when it comes to having pads on. Today's the first padded practice. And when you look at that, I mean, when there was no pads on, a lot of guys were talking in 7-on-7s and 1-on-1s. There were no pads on, so there was a lot of interceptions. Defenders weren't really, I guess, respecting the run game. But now the beef is up front, both on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. So which young guy is going to step up to the occasion? I guess be ready mentally, physically, and hopefully financially you get that payday someday to be able to make some plays for this team in purple. So I'm excited, Don. This is going to be a very, very good practice today. It's my favorite day of the year, and I know Ahmad, being a former player, you're looking forward to it. So is Tatum.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the first day of practice, everybody's energy is high. They've all been talking about this all off-season long. You probably have a lot of guys talking trash in the locker room right now, saying, you know what, when I get outside, I'm going to pop you. So I think the one thing that I want to pay most attention to today, and I discussed this with Tatum, is everybody staying injury-free, because everybody's going to have all that energy. Everybody's going to be flying around, but you don't want to see any seasons end on the first day of practice with pads on. So as long as everybody gets through injury-free, no missed assignments, I'm sure the coaches will love that. I'll be happy.
Yeah, that would be a horrible sight to see. We're hoping to see nothing but good things out here, because this is the first time these guys can really bring the energy. I want to see the attitude. I want to see the aggressiveness. And so far, we've been through the three of us, and no one said big hits. I want to see some big hits. I want to see some pads popping. I want to see some guys flying around, because this is when it really starts to feel like football season is right there. And just so that you guys know, we are situated right in front of the locker room right now. And I can already hear the music amping up, getting ready for today, and I think it's going to be a really fun one. Paul, Pete?
Well, yeah, it's going to be fun today through training camp. There's a preseason game a week from Thursday, and it'll be on Fox 9 Plus. At least that's where it begins at 9 o'clock Central against the Seattle Seahawks. Pete and I, along with Ben Lieber, will be doing the simulcast for you also on the home for Minnesota Vikings football, FM 100.3 KFAN. Now, the schedule this year, it's come up meaty. It's like there's never an easy schedule, but this one, holy cow. Not only do we face both teams that played in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia and Kansas City, but Peter, we hook all 4 of the teams that played in the conference championship games.
Yeah, we do, and that's what happens when you win a division. Of course, the following season, you're going to have a more difficult schedule, and you hate to say that there's a must-win type of a game coming out of the chute, but having Tampa Bay at home, that's got to be a must-win. I think the other part of it that really stood out to me, and this is kind of what the league does this year, but 4 of your last 6 games are divisional opponents, and we have 3 of those 4, I believe, at home. So that's a huge advantage late in the season when there's some games that you have to win if the division's in question, and then to have those games at home. And then we play Detroit twice in 3 weeks toward the end. So I think that's what the league's looking at. They're thinking now it's going to be Minnesota and Detroit battling this thing out. So they want the ratings, and hopefully we can deliver.
Well, the Minnesota Vikings, with those 13 wins last year, they won the division. However, it can be argued the Detroit Lions should have beaten the Minnesota Vikings 4 consecutive times over the last 2 seasons. So this team, these Lions, they are no joke this season. That's the target at which to shoot in the division. No longer the Green Bay Packers until they prove the quarterback situation works out okay. But you are so right about those final 3 weeks with Detroit twice. And these Lions, they're hyped, but they're good.
Yeah, they are. And the other part of this, I think, too, is to see that the Philadelphia game on the road, that's going to be a tough one. No question about it. But to get San Francisco here in Minnesota, you playing the Saints at home. So you're playing some of the more difficult teams. I think the Saints are going to have a much better year this year than they did a year ago. But we've got some good home games early. Kansas City, obviously, being at home as well. I mean, that's huge right there. Not having to go down to play down in that stadium. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Arrowhead.
So in Arrowhead, yeah. So
look at that, man. I mean, Lions, Packers, Lions. Joe Burrow before that. We're in Vegas to take on that squad. That ain't going to be easy. And the bye's late in the season.
It is. It's very late. And we play, just before the bye, we have the Chicago Bears. So that's that division-heavy end of the season that we're talking about. And again, with the schedule, Paul, you always have to just think about timing. You want to play the right team at the right time because they could be missing a key player here or there. So we sit and pontificate a little bit about it right now, but week in and week out, that's the main thing. Is if you're playing Cincinnati early, everyone's thinking, oh, great, Joe Burrow may not be 100% by the time the season begins. So that's the other part of it. That's the unpredictable part of it. And so the schedule, it is what it is. And, here we go.
As we mentioned, atop Vikings Training Camp Live, provided by Omni Viking Lakes Hotel. The A topic with the team is pass rusher Danielle Hunter, signing a 1-year, $20 million deal over the weekend. And whether Danielle practices today or not has yet to be determined. The belief is he won't. But for more on Danielle Hunter, and eventually take a peek at this. With now there's the Darius Smith. He's no longer on the team. And Danielle he's a game wrecker when he's on his game.
Yeah, he is, and he's been very, very consistent, and that's the one. The only thing that hasn't been consistent is his health, and he's been on the field. He's been off the field for the last couple of seasons, but last year I think he came back, had a great one. Getting to learn to play the outside 3-4 line, outside linebacker position. I hope that position is tweaked a little bit this year, where it's similar, but he's going to get more opportunities to line up as a true defensive end on third down and rush the passer, because they think that's what he loves to do. But you're right, he is a playmaker, and when it's fourth quarter and you need something to happen, you need to get the quarterback on the ground. Danielle Hunter is absolutely that guy, and that's why he commands a $20 million a year salary, and we expect to get every penny of that on the field.
Now, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just the ways and means become rearranged. And what we mean is the Vikings have a new defensive coordinator. It can be argued the best offseason or top offseason signing was that of new defensive coordinator Brian Flores. For more on Brian and the Vikings defense, back to Gabe and Don Mitchell.
Yeah, so earlier this year, I had a chance to talk to Brian Flores on Viking Circle, and we pretty much talked about just his upbringing in the NFL. And Don, I know you spent a lot of time with him, and B-Flow, let's be honest, he's the 12th man on the field. I know that's a Texas A&M saying, but when you got a guy that coaches like the way he does and he gets the best out of his players, that's an extra man on the field, and I believe that's going to help this defense take that next step this year. Your thoughts?
And I know you've been teasing me because I say that's the Boston College connection, but I love the fact that he just brings this aggressive attitude, and it filters down to his players, you know. So he says, I want you to be aggressive. I want you to be sound. He has expectations. He said it from the jump. So not that last year wasn't that, but this year just brings a whole new energetic and intense vibe to it. And I think players like Harrison Smith, they love it. And so even some of the younger players that you see them, they're just lighting up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these younger guys kind of lift their game, not only the rookies, but some of the 1- and 2-year guys.
Absolutely. I believe the moniker is aggressive, but not reckless. So this next video, we were not driving reckless, but the conversation was a little aggressive. So check this out. Viking Circle with Brian Flores.
Viking Circle, Brian Flores, the most anticipated interview from fans, I guess. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that.
You ready to get going?
But excited. Yes, let's get going.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Coach, welcome to Minnesota.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Weather's turned beautiful. About to get to these lakes.
Yeah.
Check out that scene. So
you a boat guy?
Excited. I wouldn't call myself a boat guy. I've been on a few boats. I'm excited to get out there. My wife and I went to dinner around Lake Minnetonka last week, and so we'll hit that spot. You know, again.
Outside of football and family, what does B-Flow into?
You know what? I'll be honest. I was actually just having this conversation yesterday. I don't have very many hobbies.
Okay.
I'm not a golfer. I don't bowl. I don't have a lot of hobbies. So it's really football, and then I spend a lot of time with my family. I try to get to as many of my kids' baseball, basketball, flag football games.
Okay.
We're a big movie night crew. So
what type of movies?
I try to hit them with all the classics: Karate Kid, Rocky, Back to the Future. You know, when they get older, I got a whole selection of things for them. When they get older, they try to get into the PG-13 world, R-rated world. We're not there yet. You know, we started to watch Bad Boys a little bit, and you know that got cut off. You know, real early on.
Coach, I know you got a basketball court in your house, and I know you said you're not into a lot of things, but with a basketball court in your house, one would surmise that you do play a little bit of basketball.
We have a nightly game of knockout in my house.
Okay. How would you describe your basketball game?
I can shoot it pretty well. Okay. It's probably the only thing I can do well. Okay. I used to be able to defend, but not as quick as I used to be. So
I read a lot of articles basically saying, you know, like when Brian Flores was younger, we knew he was going to be the guy. For a coach, when do you know that you're ready to be that coach?
For me, when it happened for me, I had a group of players, and I used to tell them, hey, you know, I hope my goals for you aren't, you know, bigger than your goals for yourself. Just say that all the time. And then I was sitting with that same group, and Nate Ebner, who was the safety I had, they were asking me, hey, coach, you ever want to be a coordinator or a head coach? And he said to me, I hope, you know, they said as a group, we hope our whole goals for you aren't bigger than your goals for yourself. That was probably that moment. And, you know, I'm living my dream, man. This is, you know, I don't think who's got it better than me. I'm out here coaching ball, spending time with, you know, with you, Gabe, and, you know, talking basketball,
Coming to the house.
Come on over, man. Come on over anytime, man. Let's see what kind of shooter are you? What's your game?
Coach, I've been told I'm a Russell Westbrook type of guy.
Okay.
So like
energy.
I'm energy. Like I'm laid back in interviews. I'm laid back around the building, but when I turn it on, like I turn it on. So I'll probably get hurt out there, but like it is what it is. Glad to have you on board. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you,
sir.
Don, there's no doubt. Yeah, Russell Westbrook. Yeah, Russell Westbrook is the I guess the nickname that I've gotten, but I think that the mainstay is I didn't wreck that cart. Like I said, the driving was aggressive, but it was not reckless, and that's pretty much the moniker for Brian Flores' defense. But how would you rate my driving, Don?
I thought your driving was excellent because you know what? You have to concentrate on the conversation, and so it's kind of, you know, kind of backseat driver-ish in a way, but you're at the helm, so it was pretty good.
Yeah, but I think just looking at, you know, Brian Flores and this upcoming year's defense, you look at it and say, okay, the goal is to be better than last year. But you look at his resume. I mean, 4-time Super Bowl champion. He's been a head coach before. Now he gets an opportunity opportunity to be a defensive coordinator the first time in his NFL coaching career. When you look at that, what pressures or what things come to mind when you look at that, I guess, the task at hand?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of coaches don't even worry about what happened the year before, right? So in their mindset, it is going to be better because this is my first year and I'm going to put my thumbprint on it. And we talked about aggressive, not reckless. And he's got some young guys that I think kind of buy into that. Lewisine, you know, first and foremost, coming back, he wants to prove exactly what he is. You have a Caleb Evans who fought concussions. So you've got all of these young guys that really want to show what they can do, and they need a leader just like B-Flow to kind of bring him up. And also, he matches their intensity. So can that translate into getting everyone on the defensive side of the ball? Forget about there's no big names or the things that I've heard about all year long. They're just out there to make sure the other team doesn't score and to do their best, and I think he's going to have them ready.
I'm excited. B-Flow, just seeing him at practice all offseason, I mean, he's very vocal. He does get behind his guys. He understands the moment. He wants to make sure he seizes the moment, and I guess put some of his skill sets against, I believe, one of the best offensive play callers in the NFL, in Kevin O'Connell. And Pete, I know you play for the Vikings, man. I know you are an aggressive type of guy when it comes to hitting, going downhill, and when you play linebacker for the Vikings, man. What I guess, how would you assess what you would have done in this defense if Brian Flores was your coach?
Helping me what position I would have played, or you know, it's one of those things where you want to just learn the system the best you can and find out where you fit. I think it's a fascinating subject to talk about Brian Flores, only because you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Teams that play us early, Tampa Bay, for example, they really don't know. I mean, what do you watch, the New England tape when he was the signal caller, or do you watch Miami when Josh Boyer was the coordinator, or do you watch some of Pittsburgh? I mean, he's going to be able to pull from all those different areas and then kind of make it his own. And that's, I think, the key for a new defensive coordinator is you want to have a system, but you may not be able to run exactly what you want because you don't have the strengths of the players to run exactly what you want. So you need to create something that's going to work with what you have. And you talk about the cornerback, that room especially, Paul, it's a very young room. It's a very, very young room. So you don't want to ask too much mentally of these guys, I think, early in the season. And, you know, you're going to have to develop Marcus Davenport into an outside linebacker, which I don't think will be too difficult. And, you know, you need 6 interior defensive linemen. So out of this group that you have, you're going to have to find 6 guys that can really move an offensive lineman.
Yeah, I think that's a very compelling point you make, specifically early in the season, in that Flores, everybody around the league says, and we hear it a lot here, is aggressive by nature. However, you can be aggressive by nature with deception and unpredictability on your side, which this defense will have here. But outside of Byron Murphy, those corners are young.
Yeah.
And even Joanne Williams, who came over from the New England Patriots, they're quite high on him. In fact, he's a starting outside cornerback as of now, but you got to be careful with the youth in that secondary.
And it's difficult to be deceptive when you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing. That's the whole point, is show this, play that. And if you don't even know what you're playing, then you know that could be problematic. And then the other thing too, you talk about you know Byron Murphy coming in, and I think Byron Murphy is one of the best man-to-man cover corners this team has seen in quite some time. I think that's kind of his specialty. You look at Mekhi Blackman, who is also, I think, a very athletic. He's small but very athletic, so I think that option is going to be out there. And when you want to be aggressive, again, remember, Paul, you got to have the right guys. Every defensive coordinator wants to blitz, but if you're blitzing guys that can't get there, what's the point, right? And the other thing too is the better your players are, the thinner your playbook. And then you have Marcus Davenport, who 2 seasons ago played unbelievably well. You know, last year I think he had some he wasn't as physical of a player, so I think he had some medical things going on throughout the year. But his size and then his ability to hit, he's super physical. And I think as a 3-4 outside type linebacker, that physicality is going to be needed, and I think he's going to do a really nice job as playing that outside spot.
And rotating defensive linemen and rotating those in the front 7, that's en vogue around the National Football League, but that's going to be the case here. Davenport will be part of that. DJ Wanham, if he's able to jump up and have a better season, that only will benefit the Minnesota Vikings defense, which so far is off to a good start at training camp. And today is the first day of padded practices, and Vikings Training Camp Live, courtesy of Omni Hotel Viking Lakes, will feature Kevin O'Connell with Tatum Everett around the corner, so don't leave. Hey, get your first look at the 2023 Minnesota Vikings during training camp. Check out a couple of night practices under the lights at TCO Stadium, as well as joint practices with the Tennessee Titans and Arizona Cardinals. Visit Vikings.com/training camp to reserve your tickets. And we welcome you back to Vikings Training Camp Live, courtesy of Omni Hotel at Viking Lakes with Pete Bursich. I'm Paul Allen. Kevin O'Connell, second-year head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, coming up very shortly with Tatum Everett. And he calls plays into the helmet of Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins throws the football to Justin Jefferson. And that whole trifecta seemed to be really, really good last year. Second year with the play calls and the system and everything, the acclimation process, it only should be better. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing that the only thing that's going to put a wrinkle in it maybe is, do you have that threat at running back? But other than that, the passing game, I look at the way that Justin Jefferson evolved last year, especially against Detroit. You go from a 3-reception, 14-yard first outing. The second outing, it's 11 receptions, 223 yards. He's learned to play against all the different coverages you can throw at him. And let me tell you this, if the line can protect Cousins just a little bit longer, and I mean a fraction of a second longer on average this year, I really do think JJ is going to, eclipse the 2,000-yard receiving mark, no question about it.
And with Justin Jefferson, of course, you have the likes of T.J. Hawkinson. The Vikings traded for him last year. And in his first game at FedEx Field against Washington, he was targeted 9 times and he caught 9 passes, along with K.J. Osborne. No more Dalvin Cook. Alexander Madison is expected to be the lead back and perhaps the bell cow back. And play action off him sets up things for Justin Jefferson. And we're seeing wonderful yards after catch by JJ. But with KJ and KJ Osborne, he's built his body up. He's still young in his career. His arms are bigger. Hawkinson's quite established. The running game to complement Justin Jefferson, that's one thing that really, really intrigues me, because when you have Dalvin, and this is no slight on Madison, but when you have Dalvin, that's an identifiable bell cow #1 back and somebody to whom you can throw the ball a lot. Well, in the early stages of training camp, Pete, whether it's Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, Kene Nwanwu, they've been catching a lot of passes, specifically in the flats, from that guy, Kirk Cousins, who's backed up by Nick Mullins and rookie Jaron Hall, about whom we'll chat a little later in the show. But just overall, some of these familiar faces on offense, Osborne, Hawkinson, Madison, and so on.
Well, I think, you take a look at Alexander Madison, and I think you're absolutely right. Can he be the bell cow? Can he be that guy? We did not see Dalvin Cook much in the reception game, lining up as a wide receiver. So can Madison add that? And Madison's already really the short yardage and goal line type running back. That's what we used him for. He will continue that role. That's the one area where this team really, really, I think, offensively needs to improve. That 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, the goal lines, just being physical up front. I think that's the one area last year where this offense really needed to work. But T.J. Hawkinson, he could be, do you need a number 3 receiver? Do you put T.J. Hawkinson and flex him out the way the Giants used to do with Shockey? I mean, you have so many options that you can go in with week in and week out to move some of these talented players around. I expect a lot from K.J. Osborne. His role is a little different. If he's going to be the number 2 receiver, he's going to be running some different routes, right? He's going to be more involved in the base offense. So, will Addison come in and provide a spark? I think Addison, with his strengths, meaning the speed and the route running ability, he's a very smart wide receiver. He's going to fit in no matter where they put him, so he has that flexibility. So I'm excited. I don't expect us to miss a beat at all offensively. Second year of this offensive line, especially the guy Ed Ingram. He's the guy I'm watching. He need a big jump in him going into his second year. But you have that same group up front. So offensively, I have very high expectations.
Well, the bookending tackles on the left side, Christian Darrisaw, right side, Brian O'Neill. That's one of the better tackles tandems in the National Football League. And again, second year with Kevin O'Connell, with now knowing the expectations and knowing a lot of the play calls, for that to get better and go from good to very good or very good to above that, I mean, that's only going to help.
It is, and we got to find a way to upset Christian Darrisaw, because when he played angry last year, he was absolutely dominant. So we just have to find a way to get him going every week in and week out. And he, I think, can play that left tackle position as well as anybody in the league. So, yeah, it's the middle of that offensive line that those guys need to shore up a little bit. We'll go from there.
And for the Minnesota Vikings, as we continue Vikings Training Camp Live, presented by Omni Viking Lakes Hotel, Pete Bursich and Paul Allen. Kevin O'Connell coming up very shortly, by the way. From the offensive line and to Cousins with the running game, it obviously will have some pop to it like it did last year, but there are going to be things that are different, not just because Dalvin is gone. Like, I think back when I hearkened to 2022, that second game of the season against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, granted, they went to the Super Bowl, but Peter, I left that thing saying, hey, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, and the quarterback runs. Now, our quarterback's not going to run a ton, but they rotated those three so beautifully. They had fresh legs in the fourth quarter. I kind of feel that's what we're angling for here.
I think so. I think, Kene Nwanwu has done a wonderful job returning kicks. He has that speed, right? And so you want to see where they're going to work, where are they going to work him into this offense and some of the other talent that you have. But I think the importance of a running game, you bring up that Philadelphia game, you're on the road, and by week 2 on the road, well, here we go again, going to Philadelphia. But when that passing game, a little bit of a bump in the road, you still have to be able to run the football,
yep,
and run it very efficiently. So that's going to be the question right there, is can we move the chains when we have to?
Now, by the stanchion, you see Ed Ingram leaning up against it. Pete referenced Ed. Now, he was a rookie from LSU, okay? And there were some moments last year where visually speaking we could see people getting around him, and I'm sure mistakes were made, but I contend last season for our right guard Ed Ingram was an absolute victory because he played every single snap and he also made every single practice as an offensive lineman. So that's infrequent in the National Football League. When you play in the trenches, Ed's a tough guy, and his improvement is very important to the totality of this offense.
And that's why you're willing to say this is a guy that is going to get better because he's on the field. Like Justin Jefferson, he's always on the field. He's always playing. So for Ingram, I think it wasn't necessarily the physical limitations. It was just learning what it's like in the NFL to have to turn away from a center and be one-on-one with some of the best pass rushers in the league, because they are now interior defensive linemen, and just learning how that works. So I think footwork, fundamentals, and anticipation are two big things that he's going to have to develop and work on. And because he is here all the time, and because he does work hard, I have a lot of confidence in that fact. He played, I think he started 13 games for LSU as an 18-year-old kid. He came in to a team, an SEC, that was on top, and he made it through that season. He made it through his rookie year as an NFL player. So I hope to see that man really step up his game, and I think inside we need it, and he will deliver.
Now, there is the wide receiver group that you see at Vikings Training Camp Live as the first padded practice is set to be unveiled. We saw Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne, Blake Prohl, his father Ricky. You played in the league when his dad Ricky Prohl played in the league, and Ricky was a heck of a player. And eventually we'll get to the rookie class, and that's where we'll talk about Addison from USC and how he's going to factor in. Brandon Powell, a former Ram, very, very fast. In fact, a couple of seasons ago when Kevin O'Connell was with the LA Rams, Brandon Powell scored a punt return touchdown against us very late in the season. Jalen Reagor, he's somebody for whom they traded early in the season, and he was part of that 2020 wide receiver draft class, which is widely considered the greatest in the history of the NFL. The point being here is there are some really good battles for the bottom part of that wide receiver room.
Yeah, it's a tough room. It's going to be a tough room to make. And you talk about Prohl, you talk about Reagor. We know that they have the requisite height, weight, and speed. And, those are the kinds of guys that you want to do the jet sweeps, that you want to do some of the trick plays and some of those different things with them, and that you can trust them with the football. So, you talk about going in pads. I always want to bring up ball security, because that's the one thing. You're not going to be tackling to the ground, but guys are going to get hit. So offensively, you want to make sure that everybody holds on to the football. But you take a look at this group. Jordan Addison, again, speed, getting up the field. Justin Jefferson Jefferson, Jalen Reagor. This is a tough room. You know, if you're a pro scout and you're looking at teams throughout the league, there might be some good players that are going to have to leave this meeting room by by the end of the season. And don't forget about Jalen Naylor either.
Yes.
I think he came in, even though it was against the Bears, it was late in the season, but he got in and made some things happen. So hopefully for Jalen Naylor, he's continuing to grow, he's continuing to develop physically, and that he might be number 4 receiver, a part of this group this year.
And Peter, I'm glad you brought up Jalen Naylor, because you know this better than anybody, playing and coaching with the Minnesota Vikings. Nobody wants to get hurt, okay? But there are certain times of training camp where if you get a little nicked up, then you get some players kind of running by you a little bit. And Jalen Naylor won't practice today. He should be back relatively soon. Why I bring up Jalen is because he's going to be on the team, and he probably is going to play, certainly more than last year. But I had Alexander Madison when he was over in London on my 9 to noon radio show on KFAM, and I asked him who the fastest player on the team was in a 100-yard dash. And he said Jalen Naylor. Nickname is Speedy. Naylor is faster this year, according to Alex, than he was even last year. So good luck to Jalen.
If you're in that meeting room and your nickname's Speedy, you got to be fast. I'll say this though: you want to make this team, be a punt returner.
Kevin O'Connell.
Got to have the punt return.
Kevin O'Connell, second-year head coach for the Minnesota Vikings, off to an awesome start last year. KOC is with Tatum Everett.
All right, thanks, Paul. You know, Coach, you said this just on Saturday, how important it was to have Danielle Hunter back on this defense. And then, boom, Sunday, the deal gets done. What were your feelings like when you guys were able to lock that in?
Yeah, I wish I can just, with everything in life, just ask, and then hopefully it all works out. But no, I was just credit to Kwesi and Rob and really Danielle's representatives for taking a plan that I had talked with Danielle about and working through the process while still having him in our building around our team, taking part in certain things while we tried to figure it out. And then, the process that took place was a good one. I feel like Danielle and I kind of grew closer through the whole thing. And more importantly than any of all that gushy stuff is Danielle Hunter's playing for the Minnesota Vikings, and we got 99 out there. He'll start out today, and we'll work him back in, eventually get him back in the team setting, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get out to practice so soon. So I got one more question for you. This is the first day of pads for the players. Yeah. As a coach, I know this is the next level of teaching and learning. What do you look forward to the most as a coach when your guys get out here in the pads?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we've gone through a process through the spring and then the early part of training camp, which we call the acclimation phase. But now the pads go on. All those times throughout the spring and the early part of camp where it's coulda, woulda, shoulda, or I would have done this in pads, now we get to see it. And whether that's our run game or the way we rush the passer, the way we protect, routes and things that come to life now in what we, real football. And we can really evaluate technique and fundamentals and who's doing the things we ask, who's not only doing the things we ask, but they're putting their own personal touch on it to make it their own, and they're thriving. And those things tend to declare pretty quickly. But it's just the beginning, Tatum. We're going to allow these guys to compete and grow throughout the rest of training camp and get a lot of opportunities to compete against other teams, both in practice and in games. And the best version of our team will show up come September 10th.
Appreciate the time before you get things going, Coach.
Thank you.
The talking's over, guys. It's now back to work.
No doubt about it. Great work as usual, Tatum, and thank you, Coach. Now, when we return, we are going to take a peek at the Vikings rookie class, and you will learn more about wide receiver Jordan Addison. It's Vikings Training Camp Live. Welcome back to Vikings Training Camp Live. You are looking at a live shot of the Omni Viking Lakes Hotel, all part of this amazing campus of the Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center and Viking Lakes. And you are also looking at a 13-win team from 2022. We'll see where 2023 carries us, because we've talked about some free agents, but it's also amplified by a rookie class featuring that guy, Jordan Addison.
Yeah, Jordan Addison, a very, very good college wide receiver. And I think one of the things under the radar with him is his ability to catch screens. He had 6 touchdowns on screens in his last 2 years in the FBS. That was #1 in the FBS over that span. Now, the Vikings threw the 11th most number of screens, but had a record high 3 touchdowns last year. So we love the screen. We love the whip screen, and Addison's that guy. He can absolutely do that, but I love the way he competes.
He's twitchy.
He's very twitchy, but he's also a very smart receiver, meaning he knows how to read coverages, middle open, middle close, and adjust his route. So can set up corners. His body positioning and his in and out of breaks is so fluid that I think the Vikings loved how he's going to fit in this team. And I trust Kevin O'Connell when it comes to quarterbacks and wide receivers.
And speaking of cornerbacks, Mekhi Blackman was a teammate with Jordan Addison, and Blackman has an opportunity to play a lot of snaps for this team.
He does, and he's around because he's a little bit undersized, and I think ran a little bit of a disappointing 40 at the combine, which doesn't really mean he's slow on the field, but I think he's a very, very good man-to-man type guy. He has that ability, great feet. He's also a competitor. He's not very big, but he goes up, and you can see this is against a 6'4" wide receiver from Stanford. He's batting that football away. He's great timing, great ball skills, and that's what you want out of a cornerback. So I think that he has a very, very good chance of really stepping up and maybe even challenging for a starting position this season.
And there's a look at Mekhi Blackman as the Minnesota Vikings prepare for their first padded practice of 2023 and training camp. Mekhi Blackman, 5'11", 178, and he's battling with the likes of Caleb Evans, along with Andrew Booth Jr., with the assumption Byron Murphy and Joejuan Williams, couple of veterans, get the start on the outside. When they go nickel, though, Byron Murphy probably will move inside, which means Blackman has an opportunity to play a lot of football and early in the season. Now, when you draft a quarterback, really no matter where you draft the quarterback, specifically if it's like before the 6th round or 7th round, it's going to be ballyhooed. And with Jaron Hall, there you see him. He played at Brigham Young University. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched BYU football since Jim McMahon played there. But when I got a chance to watch him at rookie camp and also in the early stages of training camp, main man has a very nice arm.
He does. And the BYU offense is a multiple tight end style of offense, so it's not necessarily a 4 wide receiver that you see in a lot of colleges. So he was able to do that. The thing I liked about him was his ability to throw out routes from the opposite hash. I mean, that's a good 50, 60-yard throw that he's going to have to make across the field to hit an out route. Now, he's athletic. He can move around in the pocket, but he's not a runner. I don't think he's a natural runner, but he's athletic enough to keep plays alive and then to throw the football down the field, and that's what you want to see. We saw that against Oregon State when he eluded a pass rush on 3rd and long, was able to scramble, make a throw down the field, move the chains. That's the kind of talent that you're looking for in the NFL in productivity.
Now, when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings offense, Jaron Hall probably won't play a lot this year. I mean, Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback. But when it comes to Jordan Addison, expect him to play a fair amount for an offense that was quite good last year. And for more on the offense, let's go back to Tatum and Ahmad Hicks.
Yeah, big exciting year for the offense coming up. A lot of playmakers that they have already, but a couple of guys that we need to talk about who are trying to take on a bigger role this year, especially at the running back position. No Dalvin Cook now, so who's going to be that number 2 running back behind him? Kene Nwanwu, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride. A lot of guys competing for reps right now.
It's so interesting because even though you listed those 3, that's it.
Right.
Like 4 on the roster. You have 2 fullbacks in there, but it is going to be quite a competition because I'd say, despite their differences and experiences, they're all starting out on a similar playing field. They don't have a ton of actual game reps, and so I think that this is going to be one of those like sneaky underlying battles to watch, man.
Well, you know, Alexander Madison, he's going to lead that group, and I think with his experience, he has a lot of opportunities this year to show he's that big playmaker like we saw in Dalvin Cook. Now, when you talk about playmakers, Justin Jefferson, no-brainer from the wide receiver room, but now you have KJ Osborne and also Jordan Addison who will look to get in the mix. I think this is a big season for KJ Osborne. I think he has a lot of food that he left on the table last year, and I think he's chomping at the bit to get out there and prove himself.
Yeah, could not agree with you more on that one. He looks bigger. Yeah. Honestly, it looks like he got this summer and just like ate a lot of Wheaties, and he looks so strong out there. He's someone to definitely keep your eye on, especially now with Adam Thielen in Carolina. And I think that he knows this is a very critical year for him moving forward into his 4th season. You look at him as someone who took the news that the Vikings drafted a wide receiver in the 1st round of this year's draft and used it as fuel to only get better. And I think the combination, it's going to be more of a complementary set. I mean, Jordan Addison, as you mentioned, is getting a lot more first-team reps along with those 2 first guys you mentioned because Jalen Naylor has been struggling with an injury of late. So a lot of weapons, really exciting to see for sure out there.
Well, you know, one guy who I'm sure who's losing a lot of sleep right now is head coach Kevin O'Connell, trying to figure out how he's going to get everybody the football this upcoming season. Because when you talk about all the playmakers, his offense is really, you know, based on play-action passes. So you have to be balanced in the play calling. Last year, they were fairly balanced. I think 41% run, 48% passes. So I think this is a team that, you know, he's going to have a lot of options, a lot of weapons, and bringing Josh Oliver over, big tight end, one of the best blocking tight ends in the National Football League. So I see a lot of 12 personnel right now, you know, rolling out, getting Kirk outside of the pocket, trying to help him out with that offensive line so he can get the ball to his playmakers.
Yeah, an embarrassment of riches on the offensive side of the ball for sure. You knew the defense was struggling last year, and you thought maybe that'd be their first free agency splash, but no, sir. We're going tight end. We're shoring up the run game. It was 27th in total yards last year, and so that is definitely something that I think this offense and Kevin O'Connell in particular is looking to shore up this season. I think that'll do it for our little chat about offense up here. We'll send it back to you guys up top.
And, you know, it's football season when you're hearing a lot of 12 personnel, skinny posts, shallow crosses, and things like that. And indeed, here from the Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, this is Vikings Training Camp Live. General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah joins us when we return. Hey, check out your 2023 Minnesota Vikings at training camp. We have night practices August 3rd and the 8th, joint practices with the Titans and the Cards, autographs, and family fun. Visit Vikings.com/training camp to reserve your tickets. Here comes Minnesota Vikings General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah with Tatum.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, a lot of Vikings fans excited with this guy to my right, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, GM of the Vikings, was able to lock in Danielle Hunter on a one-year contract. What were the talks like this weekend to ensure his return?
You know, with all these conversations, it's a dialogue between the agent, myself, Rob, and really we're just trying to find solutions. We always keep saying it, but it really isn't a cliche. You know, ultimately Danielle wants something and we want something, and we try to find a way to get it together. We get to add a heck of a player. I can't wait to see him. He was getting better second half of last year, and he still had the productive year he had. I think he's going to be even better this season. When he came to my office to talk, he said, I said, Danielle, you look bigger. And he's like, yeah, this is the first offseason in 2 I haven't been rehabbing an injury. I wish all of us could get that much bigger when we're not rehabbing injuries. But he's you know, you see him out there, the juice in that group. We're excited to have him, and really glad those talks took fruition the way they did.
What can a deal like that do for a locker room at this point in training camp?
Yeah, you know, I think adding, you know, this is we're trying to be the baddest dudes in the schoolyard. And so when you had a bad dude like that, I think you walk a little taller. The defense was already feeling really good about how they are. Then adding somebody like that who you don't need to pressure. An offense needs to account for where he is. They got to put bodies on him, and they got to make sure that he's accounted for. That's only going to make what Flo's doing even better.
The first day of pads, the juices are really flowing. You're hoping to see a lot of aggressive play out there, pads popping. When you're out there, and you're out here really every day, I see you, what are you looking for in your evaluation process of these players?
You know, when I'm out here, you know, so much of my evaluation process happens in that office in there. You spend a lot of time meticulously detailing, noting things, plays, who's flashing, who's not, talking to our player development guys. But out here, I try and notice what you can't see on film, the conversations that are happening, who's coaching whom, who's picking up things. I try and talk to the coaches, really pick up the hidden things that I can't find on Exos when I'm in my office by myself. So that's really what I'm focusing on out here.
Yeah, hey, he also catches the balls. I saw you had a nice heads-up play the other day. You had some quick hands.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. When I was in San Francisco, because I was the analytics guy, I think people try and typecast me a little bit, but I wasn't a great athlete, but I could walk and chew gum. So I can catch a ball when it's thrown my way. Kirk thankfully didn't put all the heat on it that he normally does, but I was able to catch one and not injure myself.
Oh yeah, no, we don't want an injured GM. Thank you so much. You can get back out to practice and watch out there. Paul and Pete, back up to you guys.
Right on. Thank you, Kwesi. And the old sweatshirt, when the heat index is up there around 90, I mean, that's got some Captain Cool to it, doesn't it?
It does. It just, his locker, I'm sure, has plenty of different things he could put on. So you just, you know, get the sweatshirt, get a new one tomorrow.
Now, Tatum brought up Danielle Hunter with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Danielle combats the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. Left to right, the expectations are Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Brian O'Neill at right tackle. So just overall, a second year in the system, you'll hear a lot of talk about the quarterback and the receivers and running backs and TJ Hawkinson. What about the offensive line in its second year in the system?
Well, the great part is that they're all back, right? You have everybody back, and so they all know what to expect from each other. And you know, maybe that's changed a little bit in the game nowadays, but back in the day, it was, you know, the offensive lineman had to know exactly how the guy next to him on their left and on their right were going to react to every different type of front, every different type of look that you can get, and hopefully they will get to that point, right? They'll get to that point with those guys up front. And we've already talked about Ingram. You know, hopefully his fundamentals will improve, his anticipation will improve. You know, Bradbury, it was an interesting situation with Bradbury. You don't pick up the fifth-year option, you come back, you sign him, and then he ends up having a pretty good season last year. So, you know, the middle of that offensive line, you know, those guys really need to work together. And again, with Darrisaw at left tackle, when he's not very happy, when he's upset, he can be one of the best left tackles, I think, in the entire league.
And Christian's also playing for future money. You know, where like him and T.J. Hawkinson, they have big deals on the horizon, so big seasons for that. Now, they'll be blocking for the likes of Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, maybe Dwayne McBride, Kene Nwanwu. With Alexander Madison, who wears number 2, he averages 4.1 yards per carry. He has 3 receiving touchdowns in his career. One took place last year on a smokescreen at Tottenham Hotspur in London when the Vikings beat the Minneapolis-St. Saints on the double doink. So when it comes to Madison, do you anticipate a 20-carry, 23 carries a game, or do you think it's going to be a timeshare?
Well, I think it'll hopefully eventually it will be that, but I think early on in the season, I mean, he's the guy, he's the only proven back that we have. He's the only guy that we really know can handle 20, 30 carries a game. So I think early on they're gonna lean on him very, very heavily in the running game and try to work some of the other talent that we have in. But again, I'm interested to see from Madison how he's going to fit in this offense, and if there's anything new that Kevin O'Connell can do with his talent set. You watch again. I go back to that Arizona game last year where he and Dalvin were almost indistinguishable. You know, the same haircuts, almost the same number. You know, on the field, the moves that they were making, were absolutely fantastic. I mean, he shook Budda Baker in the open, and I thought that was Dalvin, but it was Madison. So he has that ability. Now the question is if you can do it in a spot roll, that's one thing, but doing it in a 16, 17 game basis, that's a whole nother animal. And I think that if they can keep him to 20, 30 carries a game, he's going to be able to carry that level of play throughout the season.
And for those of you looking at the preseason, because you're raised in a fantasy football culture, thinking, the best players generally don't play, and who cares about preseason? Tell that to Ty Chandler, who's heading into his second year. He was so good in the preseason last year, not only on the field, but how he handled meetings, how he handled circumstances that went against him, that he won favor not only with the running backs coach, but with Kevin O'Connell. And he could be the backup running back this year. Then you get to Kene Nwanwu, and he's one of the best kick returners in the NFL, but there aren't many kick returns to be had these days. Now, Kene has 0 touchdowns in his third year from Iowa State. You know, with all that speed, and he's unbelievably fast, if he can catch screens and figure out the nuance of that and spurt between the tackles, then he might be able to get some reps.
I totally agree, and that's the thing when you have a room like you do. You don't have a bunch of guys that are cut from the same mold. They all have different talents. You talk about Ty Chandler. I look at him as he surprised us, I think, last year, Paul, in his ability to run after contact, yards after contact. He doesn't go down that easily, even though he's not a huge back. But I think he's kind of I'm looking forward to seeing him maybe out in space a little bit more, maybe running some of those wide receiver routes. Kene Nwanwu is definitely a kind of guy that if you can get him going north and south, let's say in the third or fourth quarter of a game when the defense, you got him worn out a little bit, he has that speed to not only get to the second level, but then break one. So you can kind of see, Madison kind of wearing a team out for 2 to 3 quarters, and then maybe at the end of the game you get Nwanwu in there who's just taking the same run, but he has that extra gear that can get him to the second level and maybe get him in the end zone for a big run.
And now you get to this guy, 84. No, it's not Andre Allison. No, it's not Irv Smith Jr. No, it's not Randy Moss. It's Josh Oliver. And his physique meshed with his speed. It's quite impressive. I mean, when you watch him full stride in open field, it's a runaway freight train. Now, Josh Oliver, I've been told here by a coach, is the best run-blocking tight end in the NFL. There's also a coach in the AFC North who went against him twice who told me the same thing. 84 is the best run-blocking tight end in the NFL.
And I'll say this, too. That bodes well for the Vikings because I think the tight end position as a blocking position has become more important with the way offenses operate. And you're absolutely right. When we were watching the offseason film on Oliver, I watched one half of one game, and I had plenty of highlights to talk about for a film room segment. I mean, the guy's a walking highlight tape when it comes to blocking.
Yeah.
And I think the blocking side of it, so the running game, he's going to be Addison, not Addison's best friend, but Madison's best friend, I think, throughout the season. And I think the other thing, too, is because he is such a good run blocker, it's going to open things up for him in the red zone because defenses just assume they've got him on one side because they want to run that way, and now you can play action off that, you can bootleg off that, and I think he's going to be able to get himself open in the red zone because he is such a good blocker.
And you just saw in the shot, Josh Oliver, 84, and T.J. Hawkinson, 87. 6'7". They're built differently, but they have different skill sets too, and they're going to complement an offense, Gabe Henderson and Don Mitchell, that should be darn good.
You know, absolutely. And it's fun to watch these guys. They all have a certain amount of swagger. Now, we know Justin Jefferson, of course, leads the swag department when it comes to wide receivers. But every single day he comes out here and he kind of runs and blows kisses to the crowd.
Yep.
This is the biggest cheer we've heard.
For sure.
It just gets everyone going.
Yeah, first and foremost, JJ gets it. He knows he's a superstar. He knows the fans are out here to see him. He sees all the 18 jerseys in the crowd. So what he does, okay, I'm going to put on a show for you, but before I do so, I'm going to make you feel welcome. And not only does that make the fans happy, the team, the locker room, they feel that energy. Okay, our best player, our superstar, he's getting the fans involved. Let's raise our level of play. So I'm excited to see what the other receivers do today with JJ's energy, how he started practice off the first day of padded practice off today.
You know, that's also that next level, right? They know it. They can feel it. They're excited for this padded practice. I think KJ Osborne was there. They have their own handshake out there.
Yep.
But when you talk about the wide receivers, you have to talk about Jordan Addison.
For sure.
And earlier this week, JJ was talking about how now he wants to be a veteran and lead him to the promised land, so to speak. And I think if you have a KJ and a JJ ahead of you and you're willing to learn, the sky is the limit because this kid can be really good.
I believe Jordan Addison is going to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in about 2 or 3 years. And I say that because he has the best wide receiver in the NFL right now teaching him. The fact that Justin Jefferson has taken it under his control to put him under his wing, I'm so excited to see what Jordan Addison can do. Jordan Addison, there is no pressure for him. I told PA earlier a couple of weeks ago, I said 700 receiving yards and less than 3 drops for Jordan Addison. That's a good year for a rookie season. You got 2 really good vets ahead of you, so why not learn from them? Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and then a couple of years down the road, this will be your team. If not, you're 1A, 1B with Justin Jefferson.
And he's looking in the face of history, right? Chris Carter was out here this week.
Yeah.
He's with Justin Jefferson. Justin's doing 360s, one-handed grabs, you know.
Yep.
Like you said, he's seeing it in his face, and he knows that the brass ring is within his.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I believe that wide receiver energy not only makes that room good, but it makes the tight end room even better. So the Josh Olivers of the world that PA and Pete just talked about, the TJ Hawkinson of the world, they're going to bring that added juice also. So PA and Pete, I'm going to toss it back to you guys to finish that conversation.
There's no doubt about it. The offense for the Minnesota Vikings is the identity of the team. But what about the defense? How much will the defense improve from last season? When we return, we will discuss the 2023 Minnesota Vikings defense. And we also will unfurl our players to watch this season. You're watching Vikings Training Camp Live. Hey, don't forget Thursday, August 10th is our first preseason telecast from Seattle. Join yours truly, Pete Bursich and Ben Lieber at 9 o'clock on Fox 9 Plus. Women's World Cup Soccer is on Fox 9 that night, but once that spine tingler concludes, you can find us here on Fox 9 as well. And we welcome you back to Vikings Training Camp Live, presented by Omni Viking Lakes Hotel. The aforementioned Pete Bursich, and I'm Paul Allen. And cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be a talking point during the course of the season. There's Byron Murphy Jr. He was an offseason acquisition from the Arizona Cardinals. You talked about man coverage with Byron, and I've heard that he's one of the better run-stopping corners in the National Football League. But overall, with a very young room, he's the elder statesman.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has wonderful feet, the footwork, and his ability to not just necessarily press and quick jam, but to play off in the mirror wide receiver. I think the other part of it, too, for Byron Murphy is his versatility, is his ability to move inside at nickel and then make all of the checks. You saw it on film. He's directed traffic, so he knows where to fit. Because it's not just that simple to say, hey, you cover this guy all day long, because they can line up this wide receiver anywhere. You need to know where to fit in the defensive scheme. So he's the veteran in this room, Paul, and I think this is the most challenging room I think that Flores faces, and getting these guys up to speed and getting this group ready to play at an NFL level as quickly as possible.
Mekhi Blackman, we discussed him. He's a rookie. Caleb Evans in his second year. He didn't play much last year because of concussions. I'll never forget that game at FedEx Field when he was playing special teams, the hit he put on that returner. I mean, Caleb mixes it up, and he's super scrappy. And then you get free agent Joejuan Williams. And Joejuan comes from the New England Patriots. And as of right now, he is a starting outside corner for the Vikings. Now, what's interesting about him, 6'3", 212, and he has arms that stretch from Maui to Maine. So, I mean, it's clear having long corners, if possible, like a Caleb Evans, with long arms. That's Joejuan Williams.
Yeah, and then you bring up the height, weight, speed part of it. Then you got Mekhi Blackman, who's kind of the opposite. He's just a quick twitch, smaller type defensive back. Again, great ball skills. He's tenacious. He goes after it. So a good mix of different body styles and everything. And it's going to be very interesting to me to see what Flores does with this group and what can they do with this group and where are their strengths. And so we'll find them out as soon as the season starts. But there's a lot of learning going on in that room. I'll tell you that right now.
Tatum and Ahmad have more on the defense. What's going on down there?
Well, a lot to talk about. They just talked about the cornerback position, but there's a lot of familiar faces returning to this defense. And we'll start with Jordan Hicks, a guy who has a lot of playing experience, a lot of tackles. He's going to be asked to fill a pretty big void with Eric Kendricks leaving.
Yeah, Eric Kendricks wearing the green dot last year, basically the quarterback of that defensive side of things. And so to have Hicks have that responsibility, I think this staff trusts him.
Yeah.
I think that's a very natural progression for his career to go towards. Obviously, you'll have someone who's a little bit more familiar with Brian Asamoah next to him. And so I think the linebacker is one of the more curious positions to really follow this offseason.
And I think they'll benefit from Mr. number 99, Daniil Hunter, showing up today.
Good to see him
he's
back,
an exciting guy. Yeah, Jordan Hicks is one playmaker, but Daniil Hunter will open up a lot of lanes for Jordan Hicks to go make a lot of tackles. Him and Brian Asamoah. Daniil Hunter getting some reps right now. He's a guy who's going to get acclimated slowly. He may not be involved with team drills today, but I know their defense is thrilled to have him back out here in pass.
Does he look stronger to you?
Absolutely, it looks stronger right now. It looks a lot bigger.
I'm not sure if you guys were tuning in when we had General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on the show. He said that when he was talking to Daniil that he just looks bigger. He goes, man, what you been doing? He's like, it's my first offseason in 2 years where I'm not rehabbing an injury. So a stronger Daniil Hunter is always a more dangerous Daniil Hunter. And that's what we really hope to see as long as he can stay healthy.
Now, sliding down that defensive line, there's no Dalvin Tomlinson right
This defense did get a lot younger in the offseason. Key pieces, I feel like the ones that we have touched on so far, and ending with Harrison Smith, are such leadership benchmarks in this league and on this team. Harrison Smith, the guy who took a pay cut to stay here, he wants to learn from Brian Flores. He's one of the best to ever do it. He had a career high in interceptions, or tied a career high in interceptions last year. He's just someone to keep your eye on because it's a safety room with a ton of talent, one of the most, I think, the deepest talent on this roster at the safety position, and Harrison Smith is the leader of it all.
Yeah, you got to rely on those guys. Entering his 12th season, you know, as I was always told, being a former football player, when the secondary makes a mistake, the scoreboard changes. Everybody else has another line of defense. So Harrison Smith is going to have to be that leader. And he said Josh Metellus is a guy who he's learning from, who's actually playing behind him. And I know you'll have more on him coming up here later. But I think this defense, everybody probably is circling them right now, saying they're not going to be as good as last year. Honestly, last year they weren't the best.
Hopefully it can only go up, right?
Yeah, they can only go up. So I think with Flores, I think he's going to get these guys in the right positions to make the plays. Maybe they don't have the star power like the offense, but I think with Flores, I think they'll be fine.
And I think one last thing to talk about, you guys, is the fact that this defense doesn't have to be top 5. They don't have to make this gigantic. They just need to be able to be a little bit better, top 15, top 10, you know, in that range, because this offense is so electric and they can score fast. But you don't want that to be your last line of defense, pun intended. You know, like so I don't think there's too far you go to improve. But obviously, if it was top 5, I wouldn't complain.
You just want them to get the ball back to Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell so they can keep scoring points. Pete, back to you guys.
Thank you very much. And, you know, for as much uncertainty as we may have with the youthful vigor, with the cornerbacks, the safety situation, this is strong. I mean, Harrison Smith is a potential Hall of Famer. And like Tatum said, you'll hear more on Josh Metellus coming up a little later. But don't forget Lewis-St was a first-round pick, and he's having a fantastic camp. Cam Bynum played the most snaps of any player on defense last year, converted corner in his 3rd year. He should improve. And then you get 20, Jay Ward, the rookie from LSU. I mean, this is Swiss Army knife guy playing inside corner, outside corner, safety, floating all over the place. What do you think?
Well, it's one of those rooms, I think, where you have a bit of an embarrassment of riches, so to speak. You have a lot of depth in that meeting room, and it's just going to be a matter of who fits where. But I agree with you, Paul. Lewis-St, I think, is the big question mark, right? With him coming back from that devastating injury, where is he going to fit, and how quickly are we going to see him on the field? Cameron Bynum, you got to love him because he came in this league as a corner in college and then made that transfer to safety, and he's been playing and done a very, very good job there. So you have Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum, 2 guys you've gone to war with for a couple of seasons. You feel good about that, and then you feel good about the guys behind him. And I'm interested to see what Jay Ward can bring to the table because he is a he directed traffic at LSU. He was a very intense football player at LSU, and the guy can hit and he can tackle really well. So you talk about first day in pads. Well, Jay Ward's a guy that may step up and surprise you a little bit, and he might be talking about him when you walk away from practice today.
And now we get to the linebackers. How about number 54, Eric Kent? Eric's not on the team anymore. 54, maybe his number on your uniform. He's hoping to become number 1 in your hearts. His name is Curtis Weaver. But earlier we heard about Jordan Hicks and the linebacker situation, including your player to watch coming up a little later, so I won't step on that touchdown call. But Luigi Villain is somebody who was on the practice squad last year, then the active roster. They paid a lot of money for him 2 off seasons ago in college free agency, Troy Dye, and so on. That's the land of opportunity, working as a Minnesota Vikings linebacker. And by the way, William Kwenku, nobody had heard of him into last year, but every time he got an opportunity to play, he did well.
Yeah, he did well. I mean, if you want experience out in the field, you've got Jordan Hicks and Troy Reeder. They've got 14 years of NFL experience behind them. So those are the guys that on day 1, opening day. They're not going to freak out on you. They're going to do exactly what you want them to do. The guys behind him, though, and you talk about a dynamic pair in between, I think, Brian Asamoah and Ivan Pace, who we'll talk about again, like you said, later. But those 2 guys, when I say dynamic, I mean explosive, right? We saw a little bit of what Asamoah could do with forced a fumble last year, a big play in a game. I can't wait to see what what the offseason brought for him as far as just being a little bit bigger, because he's going to have to withstand a lot of that physical punishment at being a linebacker. We know that Flores loves speed at that position. Well, let me tell you that Brian Asamoah has a ton of that. You're not going to be afraid to put this guy at one-on-one coverage against any of the running backs, I think, in the league. So that group, there's a lot of question marks, but I feel really good about it because of the talent that's sitting right. Yeah, we lost a lot of experience with Eric Kendricks. I think as a zone cover linebacker, he was one of the best in the league. But I think these other guys can bring a lot more to the table that'll make up for that.
Now, this is the moment for which all of you have been waiting, because ever since Skip Kruger, our producer, sent out this email with the set list, the players to watch has been incredibly controversial within the Fox 9 covenant. And we have some interesting ones for you. Each of us are going to go over the players to watch for 2023. And we will begin with Gabe and Dawn. What you guys going to do?
Don, I'm going to let you start this off.
You know, mine's an obvious one, and I'm actually really glad that he's out here on the football field today. Danielle Hunter, I think we have not been able to take our eyes off him this whole practice time. And it's not the fact that he's just out here, but aforementioned that he's bigger, better, stronger. And Kwesi said, we want to be the baddest dudes in the schoolyard. And you got number 99. Now, let me tell you, he had 10.5 sacks last year, and now he's coming back stronger, hungrier.
Yeah.
And last year he was still trying to get that outside linebacker feel. You know, he really made his bread and butter at defensive end when he had that 14.5 sacks, like back-to-back years, 2018, 2019. If you get him in with B-Flow, who can work to his advantage and maybe get him up on the defensive end side, back to the linebacker, outside linebacker spot, I think the sky's the limit for a healthy D Hunt.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, when you look at Danielle Hunter, last year, earlier in the season, he wasn't getting a lot of his sacks because he was standing up rushing the quarterback.
Yep.
When Ed Donatel and that defense basically told him to put his hand down, that's when we saw his production rise to the level that we know Danielle Hunter can play. Brian Flores, we know the number one thing that he was going to do this year was play to the strengths of his defense. So Danielle Hunter, whether it's 3-point stance, 4-point stance, is going to be really good to see. But I'm going to go on the offensive side of the ball for my player to watch. I know Tatum and Ahmad talked about him a little bit, but KJ Osborne, a guy who is solidified right now as wide receiver number 2. I'm excited to see what that next step looks like for him in year number 4 in his contract year. So we know JJ is the guy. We know Jordan Addison is the first rounder, but KJ Osborne has a lot to play for. He's playing for next year. He's playing for that $10 million, that $12 million contract that a lot of receivers get in this league once they start to get past that rookie season. So I'm excited. I want that rookie contract. So I'm excited to see what KJ Osborne does here in purple.
Yeah, like I said to you earlier, don't sleep on KJ Osborne, because he knows who's ahead of him and who's behind him.
Oh, yeah.
And that will light a fire under him. He is experienced, too. He knows the offense. He knows where he can slide in, and he has grit. So I'm with you. I think he's a guy to watch, too, as well.
Tatum, Ahmad, who's y'all's player to watch?
I'm going to let Tatum go first.
Oh, okay. Ladies first. All right. Well, my player to watch is Josh Metellus. I had a hard time kind of picking and narrowing it down because I have my eye on so many, but this is a guy that I absolutely love. I love his journey. Special teams reps, and then this past year he got a couple of starts under his belt, said he became more confident as a player. He talked about Harrison Smith being his mentor, someone that's really helped him develop, someone who was making him confident, but he is always studying. He is watching film. His football IQ is super high. It's a guy that Brian Flores even said, like, watch out, this guy's smart. He's going to make a lot of impact on the field. I think because of the way that Brian Flores' defense is structured, you can put him in as a slot defender or a dime linebacker. He's currently working in some first-team reps there, and I think he's going to be a guy to watch this season, no doubt.
The more players you can have that can play more positions, the better for Coach Flo and his defense and what the Vikings want to do. So I love what you're doing right there. I think one guy that we should all pay attention to this year is Brian Asamoah. You heard Pete talk a lot about him just a few seconds ago. He's filling in for a guy, Eric Kendricks, who had over 100 tackles in all but one season with the Vikings. So you talk about a lot of production the Vikings defense is going to miss this upcoming season. When you throw on the tape of Brian Asamoah, fast, and physical. He sees the ball, he gets the ball. And that's what you want out of one of your starting inside linebackers. You want a guy who's not going to take any crap, but a guy who can also go on the slot, go cover a running back, go cover a tight end, but also blow up the quarterback and blow up the run play. So I get really excited when talking about Brian Asamoah, because when you see him come out the locker room, always has the juice, always has the energy. He's ready to go, and that's somebody that you want on your defense, especially playing the linebacker position.
I love that one so much. I really do, because I think that attitude is going to be so crucial for when this defense is trying to figure out that identity with so many new faces. Can't go wrong with a vocal leader. Paul, Pete, what are you guys as players to watch?
Well, we are going to cover more ground than Lewis and Clark, because the one that I hit is somebody everybody's heard of. Pete's on this uncovered gem that he just loves.
The guy I'm going to go with is Ivan Pace. And you talk about a training camp story. So you come out to training camp, you know what the numbers are to watch. Look for number 40. And today's a big day for him because his ability to hit. I haven't seen a kid on college film that can hit like Ivan Pace can in a very, very long time. And the fact that he's an undrafted rookie free agent already getting some time with the twos, Paul, I think you're going to get him on the field this entire preseason, and he is going to light some people up. I love the way he plays the game. He plays it hard. He runs to the football. He's just so much potential there, even though he's just a little bit too short or not quite fast enough for all the scouts. But once you get him on the field, he is a football player. Now, he's going to have to learn a little bit. He's going to have to learn about coverages because he didn't drop a whole lot at Cincinnati. So there's some aspects of this defense that the mental part you hope doesn't slow him down. But let me tell you this, when he sees the running back with the ball, it's going to be exciting. And I expect him to knock somebody. I'm talking about an Ed Ingram type, a starting offensive lineman. Don't be surprised if he's lighting one of those guys up, putting them on their rear ends.
So with Ivan Pace Jr., he's 5'10", like you mentioned. You said he was rather diminutive. At 5'10", as a linebacker, what problems do you face?
I don't know. Ask was it London Fletcher?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have. Number one, you don't have to bend your knees much because your pads are already lower than everybody else's.
Yep. So you can run the legs of offensive linemen. That helps.
It really, I think, can be an advantage in that respect, and that he's going to have leverage on everybody. He's not going to have the long arms and the reach to get off of blocks. I think that's going to be a challenge. But when you can strike like he does, I think he's going to be able to do that. So all of his weight, Paul, is in that lower half, man. It's all just the legs and the rear end on this guy and the way he can flip his hips. I can't say enough about the potential that Ivan Pace has, and I just hope he's going to realize some of it, and I think he could be a starter in the NFL for quite some time, even though, like I said, the scouts in the front offices, a lot of them overlooked him, and he didn't even get drafted.
Well, he got a lot of money as a college free agent to come here, so he's out to make the team. One guy who for sure is going to make the team is this guy, Kirk Cousins. That's my player to watch, and I'm thinking ever since they've gone to the 17-game season, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes last year, they threw for more than 5,000 yards. Kirk Cousins is going to join that list this year. And if you're going to throw for close to 5,000 yards, and last year Kirk threw for 4,547 and he got hit a ton, he won't get hit that much this year. At least that's the hope. I think he's going to push 5,000 passing yards because this is a pass-first team. And even with Madison taking over for Cook and the timeshare in the backfield or whatever it's going to be, I think Kirk is so smart, and he and Kevin work so well together that there's going to be an increase in his yardage this year. Now, Kirk also is set to become an unrestricted free agent after this season. So at this stage of his career, it behooves him to not only play incredibly well for the totality of the 2023 Minnesota Vikings, but also for the future of Team Cousins and what could be his final deal. So I'm all over Kirk this year. Second year in the offense, first time for him in quite some time, if ever. So I'm putting him on a big one.
Yeah, and I think you have a lot of key players that on this team. I mean, we're talking the star players that are going to be under contract or have contracts coming up very soon. So usually what that means is that's good for now, right? It's good. That's a motivator like nothing else. And so you have a lot of those guys playing for their contract lives, and hopefully that plays out on the field this year.
With Cousins, the way he turned the corner in that Arizona Cardinals game for that 19-yard touchdown. I mean, it makes me giggle because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Likewise for you.
Cousins derives, I think, he's the kind of guy, he derives his confidence from knowing what he's doing, from knowing what's going on, from mastering all the details. You know, not a lot of changes and different things. That's where he gets his confidence. So with his knowledge of the system from last year and going into this year, you know he's going to be a lot more confident in the huddle and a lot more confident on the field.
Now, a week from Thursday, the likes of Ivan Pace and some of these other players we have mentioned will be front and center for the Minnesota Vikings first preseason game. It's a week from Thursday at 9 o'clock on Fox 9 Plus, and it's a simulcast. You can also listen to it on FM 100.3 KFAM, your 2 decades plus home for Minnesota Vikings football. That's where you will hear Ben Lieber, Pete Bursich, and yours truly. We thank Gabe Henderson, Don Mitchell, Tatum Everett, and Ahmad Hicks for taking part today. Don't forget again to join us for that preseason game, Fox 9 Plus, to start at 9 o'clock a week from Thursday. Check out Vikings.com for more training camp coverage. They're doing awesome work out here. And this has been Vikings Training Camp Live, presented by Omni Viking Lake Hotel. Thank you very much for watching, and